General Hospital recap for Wednesday, January 21st, reveals that Tracy Quartermain hoped Drew Kane was a vegetable while Kai Taylor suspected Willow Kane and Jason Morgan stopped a brawl. At GH, Britt Westbourne showed off her office to Jason and gave him some of the money she owed him. Britt also convinced Jason to wear his blue suit for their next date and send him on his way with a kiss. At the Quartermain mansion, Michael Corinthos and Harrison Chase got into a brawl after hurling insults at each other. Chase struck the first blow after Michael wondered how long until he was back in Willow's bed. Jason broke up the fight when he came home, but Chase made it clear that Michael would pay for what he'd done. Once he was alone with Jason, Michael worried Chase was right and that he'd indeed be prosecuted. Michael didn't want his kids back under Drew's roof, so Jason assured Michael that they wouldn't let that happen. Jason also let Michael know that he believed in his innocence. Meanwhile, Sonny Corinthos pushed ADA Justine Turner to back off Michael. Justine said she'd recuse herself from the case if Michael was prosecuted and that she truly believed Willow was guilty. Sonny insisted Drew had it coming and suggested no jury would convict anyone for shooting a snake like him. With that in mind, Sonny felt that the case should just be marked unsolved so everyone could move on. At GH again, Elizabeth Baldwin learned a critical patient was coming in and gave Lucas Jones updates. Nina Reeves was at the cafe with Ava Jerome when Willow called acting frantic over something happening to Drew. While Drew's medical team worked on stabilizing him, Willow told Liz that she was celebrating with Drew at home when they both took one sip of champagne. Willow also claimed Drew had a headache and that he began struggling to get his words out. After Willow said Drew started slurring and that one side of his face appeared to be melting, she added that he collapsed. Elizabeth hugged Willow, who also got some comfort from Nina after Kai drove her to the hospital. Kai kept gazing over at Willow looking all suspicious considering the fake show of anguish she was putting on. Over with Stella Henry, she got into an argument with Isaiah Gannon. However, Isaiah felt that Portia Robinson's marriage was in trouble long before he got involved. Portia wasn't the only one to blame for that, so Isaiah felt that Stella should go easy on her, especially since Portia stepped up for Stella during the federal government's investigation. As for Portia, she met with Tracy and Laura Collins since they were representing the hospital board. The meeting was to determine whether Portia would be reinstated on a probationary basis or let go. Portia defended herself since she only changed the test results to protect Trina Robinson. Since Portia also proved she was a good doctor by saving Drew's life when it counted, she hoped to continue working at GH. Curtis Ashford met with Laura in her office later and pointed out that Drew wanted Portia to change Michael's test results. The goal was to make Michael look addicted to opioids, but Curtis said that Portia refused and stood up for what was right. Laura appreciated Curtis giving her that information and hoped that if the baby was his, he'd continue to come together with Portia for a common goal. Back at the cafe, Ava got some disappointing news on her phone since there were some added fees for Jen Sidwell's latest art purchase that she wasn't anticipating. Trina assumed it'd be fine, but she wanted Ava to be careful when it came to Sidwell. Ava wasn't worried since she knew how to deal with guys like him and planned to spend a lot more time at Windermere. It was a win-win since Ava could make more art sales and keep an eye on Lucas too. Speaking of Lucas, he came out to the hospital waiting area and revealed that Drew had seemingly suffered a massive stroke. There was a discussion about Drew potentially having aphasia, limited mobility, and maybe even full locked-in syndrome depending on the severity of the case. Willow pretended she was distraught and secretly got rid of the syringe in a hospital waste receptacle. As for Tracy, she gleefully spoke to Nina about Drew potentially remaining a vegetable and thought karma had come for him. Portia and Stella also traded apologies thanks to Isaiah giving them a nudge toward peace. Back in Britt's office, she got a visit from WSB director Ross Cullum, who was tired of her stalling. Cullum insisted Britt was going to disappear from her life and get the project online in 3 months. Britt tried to protest, but Cullum suggested they could replace her with another scientist. Cullum pointed out Britt couldn't find another source for her medication, so she agreed to come to Windermere tonight. As for Jason, Cullum warned Britt to get him out of her life or else he'd do it for her. General Hospital spoilers say Britt will have no choice but to make some moves that'll arouse suspicion, so stay tuned. General Hospital spoilers hint that Drew Kane may have to deal with locked-in syndrome. Drew may find himself unable to reveal Willow Kane's guilt and stuck under her control. Thanks to some news coverage on Tuesday, January 20th, the show was preempted. That episode was delayed until Wednesday, January 21st, which is when Lucas Jones will offer updates on Drew's condition. Once Willow calls for paramedics and gets Drew to GH, she'll pretend she's an emotional wreck. Willow will make it seem like she just hopes she got Drew to the hospital in time following his bizarre symptoms. After Willow spills a phony story to Elizabeth Baldwin about Drew slurring his speech and melting on one side of his face, Lucas will deliver some information on their findings. Lucas will reveal that their initial diagnosis indicates Drew suffered a massive stroke, so they'll have him on stroke protocol and will be monitoring him closely. As for whether Drew will recover, Lucas will admit it's too early to tell. The doc will explain that patients who suffer strokes can exhibit a number of impairments in the aftermath. Since Willow is a nurse, she'll point out that Drew could suffer from aphasia and limited mobility. However, Lucas will offer up an option that seems like a huge hint about where this storyline is headed. And in extreme cases, full locked-in syndrome. But we won't know anything about that for some time, Lucas will insist in Wednesday's episode. Now that Lucas has provided this clue, it feels like a safe bet to say that Drew's indeed going to suffer from full locked-in syndrome. Drew may be unable to move or speak at all, meaning he can't tell anyone that Willow did this to him. Of course, Drew should figure out that Willow is guilty of shooting him too based on her latest actions. That syringe to the neck was no doubt a big giveaway that Willow isn't the loving spouse Drew thought she was. Although Drew would surely love to point the finger at Willow, he should be trapped in his own body and prevented from sharing how his wife has betrayed him. Willow will be in control of Drew's care and may ship him off to Turning Woods or another facility while she's free to do whatever she wants. General Hospital spoilers say Drew may be at Willow's mercy for the foreseeable future, so stay tuned for the next phase of this storyline. General Hospital gave another win to Drew and Willow when the latter was found not guilty of shooting him. The verdict was too much for fans who are so over these two and their nonsense. We wrote that wrapping up the Who Shot Drew storyline and the Michael and Willow custody drama was necessary for 2026. Now that Willow has been revealed as Drew's shooter and found not guilty, fans have taken it a step further, declaring they are over Drillo. Following her not guilty verdict, social media was on fire with anger over Willow and Drew never having to face any consequences for their actions. Once again, no consequences for Willow, and that idiot Drew. This is ridiculous. Over a year and a half of this nonsense. What's going on here? Are they blackmailing the writers? Declared a fan on X. Another fan expressed, over 18 months of Drillo nonsense and there's been no payoff for us as viewers. They just torture us with something we do not enjoy or want. The latter's comment hits the mark with what GH fans are saying. There's no enjoyment in watching two characters that aren't really likable continue to get away with their awful behavior. Adding more insult to injury is the fact that the stage seems to be set for Michael to pay for shooting Drew when it was Willow who pulled the trigger. Seriously, enough is enough with these two being insufferable and making everyone else around them miserable. It's time for GH to turn the page and give us something more entertaining to watch. Personally, we want less of Drew and Willow and more of Gio and Emma. Then again, watching Psycho Willow turn against Drew will also keep us hooked to our TV screens. Based on recent events that could be happening, and would be a nice change of pace on the ABC soap. Either way, writers, please give us something more than Drillo always coming out on top. It was a jaw-dropping moment at the end of the January 19th episode of General Hospital when Willow, high off her victory in court, unexpectedly stabbed Drew with a mysterious syringe. Now, while national news coverage makes us all wait another day to see the aftermath, GH fans are reacting to the shocking scene, including an epic Easter egg. The moment was so shocking, it could have passed for a Friday cliffhanger, the way Willow appeared behind Drew and suddenly stabbed him in the neck with a syringe. It left fans on the edge of their seats, and that captivation allowed one fan to notice a very important Easter egg. In response to a clip of the scene that's been circling X, one fan said, "Did you notice she said exactly the same thing to him that he said to her picture the night she shot him?" After Drew fell to the floor and was left unconscious, Willow looked down at him, a combination of fury and crazy in her voice when she said, "It's all going to work out, Drew. You'll see." This line stands out because she was quoting Drew from right before she shot him. After placing Lila's ring on the mantle, he looked at a framed photo of the two of them and said, "It's all going to work out, Willow. You'll see." Of course, this little Easter egg also confirms that Willow was already in the house at that moment, overhearing Drew's words before shooting him twice in the back. General Hospital spoilers hint that Harrison Chase may soon be back in Willow Kane's bed now that Drew Kane is out of the way. GH viewers were thrown for a loop when Willow injected Drew with a syringe out of the blue. It obviously caught Drew off guard too, as he fell to the floor and lost consciousness in front of Willow. Although Drew will likely survive Willow's plot, he may land in a coma. GH writers may put Drew on ice for a while and let Willow take charge of her own life. Willow is determined to get her kids back, but she might have a little side quest to find love again too. Despite the show Willow's been putting on for Drew and everyone else, she clearly loathes her husband. It's Chase who's slowly been stealing Willow's heart back, and perhaps she's been stealing his heart back as well. Chase recently defended himself to Tracy Quartermaine, who was concerned about the possibility of him cheating with Willow. Although Chase insisted he'd never do that, temptation may become too much to bear at some point. Chase loves Brooklyn Quartermaine, but the pull he still feels toward Willow is awfully strong. Plus, more marriage issues could be coming up for Brooklyn and Chase, especially if she keeps dragging her feet on the adoption. Chase wants to start a family with Brooklyn, but she may admit she doesn't feel comfortable with that yet. Since Chase has been fixated on Willow and keeps making risky moves, Brooklyn could pump the brakes on the adoption again. The brawl that's brewing between Chase and Michael Corinthos could certainly be a concern for Brooklyn. During a face-off in the January 20th episode, Michael will ask how long until Chase is back in Willow's bed. Chase will hit Michael over that comment and kick off a fierce fight between them. But he might be upset because there's some truth to it. Deep down, maybe Chase really does want more Willow bedroom sessions. Between all the marriage drama and his attraction to Willow, Chase may let passion erupt with her soon enough. With Drew out of the way, there may be nothing holding Chase back from sizzling with his former flame. General Hospital spoilers suggest Chase could be on the verge of a major betrayal, so stick with us for updates on any cheating news that might be ahead for Brooklyn. Anna had been locked in a cell on General Hospital, listening to a voice that sounded exactly like Faison and trying to convince herself it couldn't possibly be him, even as it reached back through years of shared history and pressed on every bruise she thought she had healed. It wasn't just frightening, it was personal in a way only Faison ever managed to be, dragging Anna back into memories she'd spent a lifetime shoving aside. When Finola Hughes talked about stepping into that space again, it didn't sound like the show rehashing a twist so much as choosing to open a scar that was never fully gone. Hughes talked about the storyline with Soap Opera Digest, describing an experience that felt oddly familiar despite the years that had passed since Anna and Faison last crossed paths on screen. When she mentioned his portrayer, Anders Hove, the warmth came through immediately. "I love him so. He is one of my favorite scene partners of all time," she gushed, clearly understanding exactly how rare that kind of chemistry is. Although Hove recorded his dialogue from Europe, the production made a point of playing his voice aloud on the studio floor, allowing Hughes to react in real time instead of pretending the menace wasn't there. That decision mattered because Anna's terror isn't abstract. It lives in tone, timing, and recognition, the sound of a man who knows exactly where to press. Hughes didn't pretend the setup was normal or comfortable, laughing as she recalled the experience and admitting, "It was nuts." But that discomfort fed the scenes rather than undermining them, letting Anna's fear feel immediate instead of theatrical. The Anna Faison history is too dense to shrug off, stretching back to betrayals, false identities, and a fixation that crossed borders and decades, and Hughes leaned into that psychological minefield instead of trying to tidy it up. She talked about how hearing Faison again wasn't about plot mechanics so much as tapping into Anna's memory, the part of her that never quite believed he was gone. That's why the voice works, even now, even without a physical presence, because obsession doesn't need a body to feel real. Hughes explained it simply, calling the process a really cool method to tap into Anna's past, her psyche, and treating the distance between actors as texture rather than limitation. By the time Anna was vomiting in her cell, insisting it was all a trick while still listening for the next taunt, the point had been made. Faison doesn't need to return to ruin Anna's peace. He never really left. The General Hospital spoilers for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026, focus on an encounter involving Michael and Chase that turns tense. In other news, Elizabeth and Lucas rush to action, and it's Britt's turn to ask Jason on a date. Now that the jury has deemed Willow not guilty, Chase must be feeling good about choosing his ex's side during the trial. After all, he went above and beyond to try and prove Willow's innocence, and he did it by disproving Michael's alibi. It's unsurprising that the two would have words now that Willow is free. The weekly spoilers reveal that Michael and Chase have a tense encounter in which Chase might point the finger at Michael for shooting Drew. At some point in the future, the detective will be eating his words. While Michael and Chase confront each other, Trina decides to confide in Ava. This may be Trina's opportunity to get another opinion on whether or not what she and Kai did was the right move. It wasn't just that they were at Drew's house the night of the shooting. It's the fact that they tampered with evidence and also figured out who shot the congressman. It'll be interesting to see if Trina tells Ava the identity of the shooter as well as the fact that they turned to Alexis instead of the PCPD. Now that Director Cullen is in town to ensure things don't spiral out of control in Port Charles and on Spoon Island, he's making his will known. The teaser suggests that Cullen makes new orders. This could either have to do with Brennan, or perhaps it's about Britt moving on to Spoon Island to continue with the lab experiments. He could change his mind about what to do with Anna. He realizes that Anna doesn't live in a vacuum and that, at some point, someone will take the initiative to find out where she is, right? Or maybe someone will find themselves in the right place at the wrong time and swear about Anna's whereabouts. In other Port Charles news, look for Elizabeth and Lucas to rush to action. Is someone in trouble? Meanwhile, for the moment, things are all good between Jason and Britt. During their recent date, they threw some axes and, of course, made a competition out of it. Now it's Britt's turn to put herself out there and ask Jason on a date. He seems to enjoy himself and even cracks a little bit of a smile when he's with her. How will he respond to Britt? The WSB has been part of General Hospital for decades, sometimes as a full-on engine for adventure, and sometimes as a convenient file folder the show opens when it needs danger, aliases, and a reason for someone to vanish. The problem has always been that the Bureau tends to feel like one big shadow with a rotating cast of faces, which works until the story asks for specifics and the whole thing starts wobbling. This week, though, the writing stopped treating the WSB like a vibe and started treating it like a machine, and the shift changes how we read everyone currently embroiled in it. When he spoke to Jack, Cullum's language mattered because it finally gave the WSB a ceiling, and it's not just him. When he references higher-ups and a directorate, the show is telling us the chain of command doesn't end with a single director sitting at a desk somewhere, frowning into the middle distance. There's oversight above the oversight, which is exactly the sort of institutional layering you expect from an agency that survives by staying vague. That one detail turns the WSB from a single authority into a structure with compartments, politics, and people who don't all want the same outcome, meaning information becomes currency and silence becomes policy. If there's a directorate, there's also distance, insulation, and a built-in way to deny knowledge when something goes sideways, which is basically the Bureau's love language. It also explains why the WSB has always been able to hide messes and keep moving. When power is shared in a cluster rather than held by a single person, accountability becomes optional. Port Charles keeps looking for the villain in the room, while the WSB keeps operating like the villain is the room. Cullum backing off from Jack isn't restraint or professionalism, and it's definitely not a respect thing. It's caution, The kind that shows up when the person asking questions is also hiding their own fingerprints somewhere nearby. The second Cullum leaned too hard on Jack about who his asset inside Windermere was. He risked giving away what he's connected to, and the show has already made it clear he's tied into Sidwell's operation and Fozon's cold fusion work. Jack's refusal to name his source doesn't read as swagger either. It reads like scar tissue. Double Agent Moreau already cost him 2 agents isn't a flex, it's a warning, and Cullum hears it because both men understand the same ugly reality. If you expose the wrong thing to the wrong person, you don't just lose a case, you lose people. So Cullum redirects instead of breaking him, because breaking him would require showing his hand. He told Jack to focus on Spoon Island and pushed Anna back onto the board to try to divert Jack. But knowing what's happened to her, Cullum backed off on that as well, because attention is the one thing a directorate can't control once it catches fire. For years, the WSB has been an excuse. This week, it became a system, and systems are always more frightening than lone villains, because they don't need to be honest, and they rarely feel guilty about what or who they bury.